So we're moving to a world where we're thinking about attract in advance, as opposed to a reactive, tactical job posting strategy that typically organisations fall into. And really, before you can do any of that, we need to improve the stuff at the start, right? Understanding what it is that we're actually looking for, and understanding the needs of the organisation. So we've introduced strategic workforce planners into the business that go across our organisation and have detailed, in-depth conversations with the business to really start to understand the long-term needs of the business. And that really helps us as an organisation to start defining what it is that we actually need to start focusing on in terms of building long-term talent communities that we nurture over time to improve our ability to actually fulfil requirements through the stuff we've been doing in advance rather than the reactive advertising on a live vacancy at the point that it comes live. So we've set our function up to have talent engagement leads and talent engagement specialists at the heart of how we develop our talent communities. And the talent engagement lead is really responsible for understanding the needs as defined by the strategic workforce planning function and translating that into where we need to focus our efforts from a talent pipeline perspective. And just going back to that exercise that we've done off the back of the VONC discussion, you know, this really comes to defining your target audience, deciphering who that target audience is and understanding who they are, what their motivations are, what their challenges are. And off the back of that, actually start developing your strategy, your content strategy, your channel strategy, and then delivering and then diagnosing that on an ongoing basis so that we can truly understand what's working and what's not working. And fundamentally, it's the role of our talent engagement leads to understand that need and then start to deploy that into kind of our strategy. And then we have talent engagement specialists that are actually managing that activity on a day-to-day basis. So having defined the pipeline, we then have talent engagement specialists that are spending time engaging with that pipeline, managing the content strategy, deploying it, etc., etc. Fundamentally, we're with you to building a database of talent that is fully GDPR compliant and is nurtured using actually Candidate.ID to help support that nurturing strategy. And then what that enables our recruiters to do, hopefully, if we get the planning piece right and we nurture our talent pipelines effectively, is to fulfil their requirements by coming into the Capita database and engaging with candidates that not only are relevant for the role, but are actually ready to talk to us about the opportunity because we've been nurturing them effectively through the nurturing process and taking them down that pipeline funnel to make sure that at the point that we have a live vacancy, we spend our time talking to the candidates that want to talk to us about job, as opposed to people that are still at the point where they don't even know who we are as an organisation or what we do or how that might fit with their own motivations and aspirations, etc. So I guess bringing that into context in terms of what we started to do when thinking about nurturing our talent, I guess this kind of workflow kind of brings that to life. So you've got your channels on the left-hand side, whether that be your employee referral program, whether it be that stuff you do for your job board advertising, whether that be your social media activity, or actually potentially people that you already have in your database, the people that you might want to actually reawaken and bring back into the process. The people that you've spent lots of time, effort and money on bringing into an ATS through previous activity, how do you actually recycle those back into the process and make sure that they become part of your solution? We then, having defined our channels, start working with Candidate.ID to start thinking about the actual platforms that we're going to start delivering our content out to, whether that be email, video, infographics, social media, blogs, etc., etc. And fundamentally, bringing it back to the personas that we're looking to target and how we need to target them, developing a specific content and engagement strategy and the platforms that we'll use to engage them across. Where that's really leading to is that we get to the point where we have hire-ready candidates, right? We have candidates that are ready to talk to us about jobs, and using the Candidate.ID platform, we're able to identify that in a couple of ways. Number one, because we've scored our content strategy and understood the value of the different content that we've delivered, we're able to understand how engaged our candidates are with our brand and the content that we've delivered. So someone that is moving through that pipeline funnel is going to have a higher engagement score than someone that's just at the start of or at the top of the funnel. So we're very easily able to find the people that are more engaged based on the content they've consumed. But also actually, recruiters are pinged an alert at the point that someone's started to review job-related content. which actually enables our recruiters to pick up the phone and start talking to them about potential jobs that they may have been viewing, which actually makes the conversation that our recruiters have with candidates far more relevant, far more likely to convert, because it's perfect timing, right? You've been looking at jobs, we're now talking to you about jobs. It feels like there's a kind of mutual benefit there. And ultimately what that kind of has enabled us to start looking at is how we reduce our time to hire. How do we actually enable our recruiters to actually spend time just talking to fantastically engaged, relevant candidates rather than spending loads of time trying to find people to start a conversation with? Reduce our cost per hire. So by being more strategic about the types of people that we're trying to engage, and also the types of channels that we're trying to deploy our strategy through, we've actually been able to reduce the amount of money we spend on tactical job advertising, right? Because we're much more of an attract and advance mentality than we are a tactical advertiser of live jobs. So I guess to bring that to life in terms of a particular case study, we support the recruitment for Essex County Council, and social workers is one of their key areas, and it's also a massive challenge for us as an organisation, as it will be across the UK. We had 270 social workers in Taleo that we'd previously brought into the database, whether that be through a previous job advert, whether that be through previous events that we'd attended, etc. But they weren't engaged. We had a very limited relationship with them, and fundamentally we didn't really have a relationship with them at all, if I'm perfectly honest. We didn't have a strategy that meant that the recruiters were engaging with them on a regular basis. They were just in our database, basically. They were a load of people that sat in Taleo. And because of that, we had no idea who was interested, who was not interested in both working for Essex County Council, but also potentially the social work opportunities that we currently had. So that led to a bit of an opportunity to actually pilot Candidate.ID for the first time, and that's how our relationship with Candidate.ID fundamentally started. We knew we had lots of useful and relevant content, but we weren't quite sure how to distribute it in an effective way. And using the Candidate.ID platform, that gave us the platform to not only distribute it, but automate it, score it, and enable us to really start understanding, through tracking the candidates' activity, where they were in our pipeline funnel. And fundamentally, as I said earlier, what that led to is that it enabled our recruiters to spend time talking to warm, engaged candidates rather than starting from scratch, which was a massive value to the team in the Essex recruitment team, just purely because time is massively important for them, but also this is a massively critical area, so the more time they can spend talking to engaged candidates, the better overall. You know, going back to the stuff earlier in terms of you've defined your audience, you've started to decipher who that audience are. What that enabled us to do is start building our content strategy. And the principle of the pipeline from awareness through to application is kind of the pipeline funnel that we wanted to take them from. So first of all, we needed to make them aware of Essex County Council, and then we needed to start to educate them about who Essex County Council was, the kind of things that we do in the social work space, what Essex County Council stood for as an organisation. Then we needed to start helping them to consider what it actually might be like to work for Essex County Council, what it might be like to be a social worker within the Essex County Council setup compared to other organisations. And then fundamentally off the back of that, we wanted to be able to put jobs in front of them. And you'll see the kind of the colouring on this. What we're actually doing also as part of this development of the content strategy is defining the impact of that content, or the relevance or the importance of that content. So we're using the Candidate.ID algorithm in the background to score the content that we've developed and enable us to actually put weighting to some of that content. So you'll see it goes from blue to red as you go through the pipeline funnel. The weightier that content is in terms of impact and score. So you can appreciate that one candidate may be sent an email and they may click on that email, open it, click on the link, consume that content, and that will automate sending them to the next bit of content that we think is relevant for that audience. But if they haven't clicked and opened that, then you might retarget them for a different method. So you might send them an email, but you might then send them a text as a follow-up to try and push them through that pipeline. So the great thing about Candidate.ID as a platform and how this really helped us to manage this process is that in the back end we're able to actually start filtering by ID score. So I said earlier that we're scoring the content, and we're therefore able to identify the people that are more engaged than others. Coming back into the Candidate.ID back end, you can see the ID score there. We can very quickly bring the people that are most engaged with us to the top, which is fantastic, right? Because that means the recruiters are very quickly engaging with the people that are more likely to want to talk to us. People at the bottom, they're probably not through the pipeline funnel enough yet, so there's no point trying to engage them about a job opportunity. And what you can also then start to do, before you potentially pick up the phone to a particular candidate, is drill down even further and actually start to understand the journey that individual's gone on. So what content have they consumed, and when did they do that? And number one, that sets you up for a good conversation with the candidate, because you've got a bit of a feeling for who that candidate is and what they know already about us as an organisation. And whilst not wanting to create an environment that suggests that we, Big Brother, have been watching your every move, and we know that on the 2nd of July you consumed the data privacy statement wasn't that interesting. They said no, by the way. But you can play into the conversation tactically stuff that you kind of know about that candidate, whilst not giving them the EBs. And I guess in terms of impact, it was a 6-week campaign. As I said earlier, we had 270 candidates in the database. 9 of those candidates updated their details by the campaign. 6 of those were identified as hire-ready candidates, and we actually hired those 6 candidates during that 6-week period. So we went from a database of 270 people that we had kind of just lost any engagement with. We had no relationship with them fundamentally. They were just people in the database, to hiring 6 of them in 6 weeks. And fundamentally, if you start looking at email performance and some of the things that we picked up from the data that we got from Candidate.ID, the email 1 open rate, so the very first email that we sent, 74% of the audience opened that email. Email rate, 56%. So pretty decent stats in terms of the volume of people that are actually opening the emails that we were sending to them. And in terms of engagement, 83.5% of the database was engaged at least once through the content that we sent them. But 27% were highly engaged. So from the scoring mechanism that we had in the background and understanding how the content that we were using resonated with them, 27%, nearly 30% actually were highly engaged. And that's what enabled us very quickly to generate those hires. So for us, it was a fantastic kind of example of how you can reawaken and nurture existing talent, and that's enabled us to now start thinking about how we play that back to the model that I talked about right at the start, and how we actually start to nurture talent pipelines across our whole organisation. Not just people that sit in the database, but new talent that we're bringing into the database as well. And just thinking about the wider impact for Essex County Council, this played into a bigger campaign which was about social work. And applying some of the things that we talked about today has meant that we reduced hard-to-fill vacancies by 75%. We successfully filled 98% of 137 perm roles using direct fill. We achieved a time to hire period of 20 days, and we reduced our reliance on agency staff from 40 to 15%. So whilst Candidate.ID and the nurturing principles didn't play into all of those results, they certainly helped us to kind of focus our efforts in an area that is definitely a challenging area across the UK.